Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today around optimizing MAP and CRM systems for B2B marketing and sales success. Just give everybody a minute or so to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please feel free to chat them over. And if we have time at the end of this session, we'll go ahead and address those questions live. If not, we'll be certain to follow up with everybody individually for your questions. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and get things started. My name is Amish Sheth. I lead our customer experience team here at LeadSpace. And today, we're going to walk you through some best practices and what we've seen across our customer base in terms of how they've been able to optimize, the marketing and sales efforts by really focusing in on how to get more out of their MAP and CRM investments. And today we want to share, general best practices around what we've seen in the industry, as well as I mentioned, across our customer base. So to dive into the agenda here, today we're going to focus on just kind of setting the context with a few challenges that we've seen across the board when it comes to trying to optimize the value and the investment in these systems and how to create better marketing and sales alignment to drive more efficiency. The use cases that we're going to focus on in today's session, and it's not limited to these use cases, but we're going to focus on the inbound lead management process, data governance, just generally speaking. We'll focus on how to think about that from a CRM perspective, and then ultimately, how to improve the efficacy of your various outbound strategies as it relates to sales and in generating new opportunities, pipeline, and ultimately, closing deals faster. Throughout the way, we'll highlight a few case studies and examples of what we've seen here at LeadSpace. So getting into some of the key challenges, and these are summarized as some of the high-level, sort of common themes we typically see, but again, not limited to just these challenges. But first and foremost, it starts a lot around the data. The data oftentimes still cannot be trusted. Companies are spending a lot of time and effort and still trying to figure out how to create, better single source of truth understanding about their customers, and prospects. But a lot of the strategies that are being implemented often still lead to silos and, no organization-wide understanding of the customer. Oftentimes the way the insights are integrated, they're not as timely and actionable as they potentially could be, which effectively leads to kind of a inconsistent customer experience because different teams see different views of the data, understand the customers differently, and that effectively, leads to these silos from an execution standpoint. That makes it harder to be customer first and really drive the optimal customer experience. And then internally, it makes it more challenging to operate very efficiently and get more of the bottom line business results you're looking to get from these investments and strategies. So the first thing we want to highlight is, sort of a general approach in implementation strategies that seem to work really well when it comes to trying to address some of those challenges we just identified. First, it starts off with really trying to understand your first-party data, right? First-party data exists in various systems internally across your marketing and sales tech stack. You might have IT systems, data lakes, where a lot of valuable first-party data about your prospects and customers exist. There's a lot of external data out there from a third-party perspective that can help complement your understanding of what you already know about your existing known entities or people. And the first sort of strategy that we believe is foundational to really solving some of those challenges is bringing those data sets together and unifying it so you can truly get that single view of a customer, uh, leveraging all the data that could be available for your specific, go-to-market efforts and your target customers and prospects. So that's kind of step one. How do you have a strategy to bring all that data together? And it's not just about bringing it together once, it's about maintaining it. It's about being able to apply certain insights in real time so it can drive better data decisioning. And that's where there needs to be a bit of a sort of a execution layer that sits between the various engagement channels that you guys have. Oftentimes, that's where a solution like a customer data platform will really come into play, as they are purpose built to help you unify that disparate data across all your systems to try to generate that single understanding of a customer. It doesn't stop there, of course, right? That's kind of step one to building that foundation, but you need to be able to segment, analyze, and understand your customers so you can really build the right activation strategies to go engage, your prospective buyers and customers in the most relevant way. And the fundamental other goal should be to try to connect that to your various activation channels, because you're probably investing in more than just MAP and CRM. We're going to focus on those two systems today, but the idea should be it should scale and support any other channels that you may be using to engage your buyers. So that's kind of setting the context. Today, we're going to really get into a couple of key use cases, as I mentioned. We're going to illustrate, some best practices we're seeing around how people are really improving how they think about inbound lead qualification, in a few different tactics and strategies that can be implemented to really improve the quality and accuracy of how you think about prioritizing demand, segmenting it, and ensuring that the highest value leads are making it to sales for follow-up. So they're able to convert that marketing generated demand into qualified opportunities and ultimately customers. So that'll be one use case we'll touch on here today. The other use case, as I mentioned, is going to be around sort of the outbound motion. So how do you feed these insights on an ongoing basis in real time and on demand to sellers so they can be well informed on how they should be thinking about making the most out of their outbound efforts as they try to generate their own demand and their own pipeline to try to hit those company goals. As part of that process, we will touch a little bit on some additional insights around, as I mentioned, data governance and how understanding account hierarchies can play into that overall strategy when it comes to, again, optimizing your CRM and marketing automation system to be able to target the right companies that are most likely to convert at the right time with the relevant context and insights you need to really drive the right message as far as next best actions go, so you can really be relevant and increase the likelihood that they engage and ultimately convert. So those are just a couple of slides we wanted to set the stage with today. The goal is actually, we're going to walk you through some live demos and best practices that we actually enable for our customers today as it relates to, in this case, we're going to use Marketo for the marketing automation example, and we're going to use Salesforce for the CRM example. So when it comes to optimizing your marketing automation system, there's a whole host of use cases that we can support that can help you get more value out of your marketing automation investments. For today's purpose, we're going to focus on the inbound use case in particular. So when it comes to inbound, most companies we work with, most prospects we talk to, have some strategy and kind of logic and process in place to try to optimize, how they think about qualifying inbound leads. We're going to start off by showing you some of those what we'd call kind of table stakes or standard approaches you should have, and then we're going to complement that with some additional approaches that we see that are really helping our customers take it to the next level. It's not meant to be lead space specific. These are general concepts and signals that are available that you can use to support your own strategies, irrespective of whether it's with lead space in particular. So the first thing is, from a standard workflow standpoint, every new lead that you generate, you should have a process where you're in real time triggering an update to some external third-party source to generate more insights, so you have the information you need around, what type of company do they work for, what region, how big is the company, what industry, because those are the signals that are often necessary to figure out how do you route a lead if you're going to prioritize and push it over to sales in the first place. And that's some of the table stakes stuff that we believe you must have in place to really try to optimize the inbound investments of all the money you're spending to generate these leads. Going beyond that, though, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. I'm going to show you what the data looks like. So if you think about a new lead, new leads often will show up with very limited information, excuse me, around business card data, first name, last name, email, the company they work for. The goal is to keep the form short so you can optimize conversion rates on your website. But now you don't have the information you need to route those leads. And that's where, if I go back to this view, that standard workflow is meant to support. Now, beyond the standard workflow, here at LeadSpace, we believe there's more you can do to further optimize your inbound qualification criteria if you actually bring in some of your more valuable internal data to this decision point in real time. And so a couple examples we'd like to highlight here around things that we've seen with our customers. One being, lead to account matching. So this notion of, if your internal data that might live in different systems, it might be in CRM, or might have valuable account data in your master data management system, the ability to cross-reference and see if a new lead matches one of those existing accounts where you already have the internal data is extremely valuable, because now you can start to route leads immediately to the right account owner based on a lead to account match. And you don't even need third-party data. So this is an example of, customers like Salesforce we work with, where we're able to match against their master account data set to determine, does this lead match an account? If so, we know the account ID and the account owner, and that can be leveraged to streamline how they pass leads to the right owner internally. And we're effectively able to take their processes before and after lead space, where it used to take them about 30 minutes with their downstream processes that were required to do this match, to literally seconds and minutes where leads can be followed up by the right rep internally, as an example. Additionally, other examples around cross-sell, upsell. So the ability to actually, if you're a larger enterprise organization, you might have multiple marketing automation systems or CRM systems that are applicable to different business units in your operational structure. The ability to bring unified insights from different systems into each system allows you to answer questions like, I'll give you an example from one of our other customers, Trimble, where they have that situation. I think they have about 12 or 13 different marketing automation systems, where if a lead comes into their construction sector systems, we now can tell them, are they already a customer of the transportation sector? And by being able to cross-validate these insights, you can streamline the higher value opportunities that should be followed up based on insights that might not be available in a single standalone system. So a couple of examples of kind of advanced unification use cases that allow you to take more data into consideration as to how you think about optimizing, again, your lead follow-up processes. So let me show you a little bit of what that data looks like here. So if I go to the before and the after view now, this is, the type of information we can bring to light. So as I talked about, matching to leads in real time, if we're able to persist and unify and leverage that first party data, we can not only just enrich that data with what LeadSpace has to offer, but you can now take advantage of that valuable internal data from a matching perspective. What type of account tier are they? Are they a high value customer? What products have they already bought? All that information can allow you to better segment, nurture, and then prioritize these leads. Beyond that, there's things like being able to understand the account hierarchy relationship. So are they a company that's an entity that's related to a larger organization? What's the propensity of these leads to convert and or buy? Are they in market for certain products given third party intent signals? Are they the right person given the profile of the individual? And these are additional signals that can be complementary, that can really help you optimize, again, how you think about further qualifying that inbound demand. And so the other example I want to highlight here from a funnel optimization standpoint is, how do you take scoring that's natively available in a marketing automation system and then enhance it with other scoring capabilities that are available, whether through your own internal efforts or through companies like LeadSpace that offer other scoring dimensions that can complement what you might be doing in Marketo, for example. So if I look at this example, we have these funnel optimization use cases we outline. The idea is, for the most part, when we talk to our customers, behavioral scoring is something they still generally rely on in some capacity to understand the engagement of the known users with different marketing assets, sales activities, et cetera. And that can be one dimension that should inform, your AQL prioritization logic. At varying degrees of success, they're also using demographic rules to try to understand the profile of the individual. But that's where the lack of trusted data or incomplete data makes those scoring rules less impactful. And so that's where, again, a company like LeadSpace can really help you bridge that gap, because we offer native persona scoring capabilities that can complement the behavioral scoring on the person side, where it can be a bigger contributor to how you think about qualifying leads. On the other side, there's two other dimensions that not a lot of organizations are fully capitalizing on, which is, if you were to analyze who you've sold to in the past, from an account profile standpoint, how do you identify whether this new lead works for an account that's most likely to convert? By being able to incorporate predictive fit scoring, you can take that now into consideration, as well as intent scoring. Where are they in their own buying journey as you look at third-party intent signals? Because that can be a good indicator of whether the timing of that lead follow-up is going to be aligned to where they may be in their own buying cycle. So as you combine these four scores together, it can really help you optimize how you think about your AQL prioritization rules. For the sake of today's demonstration, just because we have limited time, I'm not going to get into how it all works. If you guys are interested, we'd be happy to dive deeper and show folks, what we see as best practices and how to combine these scores to really optimize that scoring logic. So that's a glimpse into some of the optimizations we've seen work really well for the inbound use case when it comes to, again, getting the most out of that inbound demand that's being generated. On the other side of the equation, I'm going to switch gears now and go to the sales side of things. So we're going to use Salesforce here as an example. LeadSpace, in this particular instance, we have a native app that works within Salesforce. There are other companies that offer that as well. But the general idea we want to start with is you have to have a process in which you're governing the data and you're updating the data on different cadences to support the different use cases that are going to help your sellers achieve the goals. And what you'll see in this view is there's a variety of different, we call them sync definitions, but they're basically different frequencies at which we're updating data in the CRM to support different use cases. So for example, we can update weekly third-party intent signals or first-party intent signals to leads, contacts, and accounts. Anytime a record is updated in an important way, maybe it's a certain flag that was changed that requires you to say, hey, let me go see what other information might be available from a third-party standpoint, that could trigger those type of updates. Every time a new lead record is created in real time, contact or account, you can get those insights applied. And then beyond those more frequent cadences, you'd want to have a strategy to update the rest of the database on some cadence that makes sense for your business, whether it be quarterly, maybe on the target accounts and contacts, it's even more frequently, like monthly. The idea is having a good end-to-end strategy to ensure that your account happens in these systems, given all the job movement. Companies are growing, they're acquiring companies, and by being able to have all these updates pre-configured, you're going to be able to optimize what everybody sees in your Salesforce CRM system. What does that mean from a sort of analytics and visualization standpoint? So these are some native dashboards and reports that we help enable here right within Salesforce that can really help you govern the system better. The first set of 4 reports are around understanding what's happening when it comes to these sort of data update activities. How many activities have successfully been updated across the different objects? At times, maybe some activities are partially going to succeed. There may be some issues. Having the visibility to audit and understand what maybe didn't work right is very important as you think about, again, optimizing the last mile of the data governance strategy. Understanding what's happening live and then what's scheduled for the future, another perspective. By being able to set all this up in advance, you now then can have great visibility into the current state of your system as it relates to how much are these records being completed by signals like third-party data. So this shows a breakdown of account enrichment for third party. You can see 20,000 of the records have been enriched out of 21,000, so about 96%. So it helps you quantify the value of that third-party data. It can be achieved at different levels of granularity for accounts, contacts, and leads. The confidence level, every time a record gets enriched, it's not necessarily equal. So having a strength indicator of like how confident are we that that data that was appended was the most accurate can help you further understand where to streamline and automate operations where you use the data versus where you might want to put in, some verification steps. Sometimes you got to have people double check some of the lower quality enriched records to ensure that you're optimizing how you're operationalizing this data. And then ultimately getting the visibility into the key fields that you would care as a business. These are just some examples that we often see, but it's all meant to be highly customizable and how you would want to report on the completeness or quality of the signals you care about. So country, employees, industry, looking at coverage, like how many C-level folks or different department levels have different levels populated. So you can really understand what your coverage looks like, where you may have gaps as you think about certain accounts, how lead to account matching is supporting the operations, as well as, how many dupes you may have. And as we mentioned at the beginning, having a strategy to understand account hierarchies can really support various territory planning strategies, right? Whether it be named accounts and understanding how to do the territory updates during your planning season, so on and so forth. So that's a view into sort of the initial setup and the data. The next couple of reports with the remaining time we have is really showing you how your sales reps can take advantage of this data from their own day-to-day perspective. So bringing that first-party data, all these different advanced scores that you can incorporate around the predictive fit, the intent, the persona, can really help you understand, if this is my patch as a rep, how many accounts in my territory are actually A accounts. The A accounts typically convert 3 to 5 times better than an average account. So being able to understand that perspective ensures, as a seller, I'm focusing on the accounts that are most likely to convert more often than the D's that are the least likely to convert. Then you can couple that with other signals like intent to say, okay, which of the accounts in my territory are actually showing high intent signals, indicating they're a great fit and the intent might be right. So it might be a perfect time for me to try to engage these accounts right now. And I'll drill down into some examples of how you will get further insights to really connect the dots with what you should be doing there. More generally speaking here, just understanding if you look at all the people in your database, how many of the people align to one of the buyer personas that you care most about? And, being able to get that specificity to know that, in this case, there's, about 58% of the data set that doesn't align to the personas, that's the part of the database you don't want your teams really focusing on because they're not the right people that you would typically want to engage with. Generally speaking, the idea with these dashboards and reports is to create really actionable plays for sellers that with a click of a couple of buttons and just visually looking at a dashboard like this, they can understand what the right next best action should be. For example, if you have customers that have bought your storage product, or maybe you're a company that sells server solutions, if they're looking for there's signals indicating that they might be looking for an alternative solution based on the fact that they're looking for another storage solution, but they already have yours. That's competitive risk. So it helps you identify potential churn and help people, again, reach out with the right message when you start to combine these signals together. So with that said, let me jump into one other example here around how these signals all can be cumulative and help you understand what to do without really a click of many buttons. So in this case, let's say you're selling server products and one of the competitors in your market is Cisco. And you know that these are the list of accounts that you want to go after that currently have a Cisco solution. So it's, a competitive takeout type campaign. Knowing that SecureWorks here is an A company, that would be the best starting point here for me as an outreach standpoint. Also knowing that they're showing high intent this week indicates that the timing for me to strategize for this account this week is probably a good idea. Knowing what they already have as it relates to Cisco products is really important because that's going to help you contextualize where your value propositions are different, where you differentiate just generally from maybe a feature or capability perspective. So it's good to understand that. And then by understanding what intent they're actually showing, like what are the topics that are most actively being shown within that organization. So maybe it's server automation, indicating their current server stack has some manual steps and they're not really getting the most out of it. Maybe it's a cost consolidation play. By using these topics, you can really start to understand, what that next step should be. Furthermore, this is really important because intent typically is at the domain level. If you're trying to target large organizations, that intent can come from anywhere. So being able to triangulate down where the location of those signals are originating from is extremely important if you're trying to efficiently identify who you should engage. So these metro location signals help you understand, where it's, again, the signals are the most prominent and where you might want to start engaging the right people, which is the last step. It's how do you know who to engage? It's knowing they have the right persona that you would target if you're trying to, figure out who to sell servers to. And then by being able to correlate where these people, their location is relative to the activity location, now you can start to make better bets on who you should try to target first. And that's effectively, where you can start to gain a lot of operational efficiency. So I know we're up against the time here with a couple of minutes left. So that, these are just a couple of examples of what we see as best practices that are really helping move the needle for our customers. Generally, these are the type of signals that are out there in the market. And if you can figure out how to combine them together, that's where you can really start to see a lot of impact to, conversion rates, pipeline, accelerating deals, driving bigger deals, saving customers that maybe add churn because now you can get ahead of those signals sooner. And so that was, really what we wanted to highlight today as part of our webinar. Here's a quick snapshot into some of our customers that we work with in leveraging some of these best practices we highlighted today. And in terms of, follow-up, encourage you guys, if this was interesting, feel free to reach out to me. You see my email there, reach out to our marketing team. If you're a customer, reach out to your customer success manager or account executive, and we'd be happy to explore your specific use cases and what you might be thinking about in more detail. And with that said, we're at the end of the hour. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear us out on different ways to think about optimizing your marketing automation CRM investments. Take care. Have a great day.